Okay, so I think I'm gonna just make a start now. It's literally 3:35 p.m. in London now, and wherever you are in the world. So, welcome to our webinar 5, Finding Joy in Reading and Bullet Journaling. So this is the 5th webinar of our SkillQuest campaign organized by VietPro. So today we have a very special guest. We got Dieu. She's a founder of a virtual reading club. She comes here, has a lot of exciting, fun tips for you in order to help you improve your reading. And obviously, especially crucially during this time, we all want to do a bit of more reading. I've got the list of books that I always want to read, but never actually have a chance or actually feel really I could finish that. So I really need some of your help today. And then I'm sure everyone's joining today, very excited to hear what you're going to share as well. But before we get into that, let me just introduce myself first. So my name is Son, and I am the representative of VietPro. We organized this series of webinar, and this webinar obviously is part of this campaign. And we're just going to run you through some very quick information about who are we, why we do this campaign, and what's that sort of the main purpose of this campaign as well. So who are we? We are Vietnamese professionals currently based in the UK. So we're a community of about 4,000 people, including both students and professionals. So our main aim, our main sort of purpose is really to provide a platform for everyone living in the UK and also around Europe and hopefully around the world at some points to just have a platform to really connect with each other, to support each other, to network, provide some means of sort of communication, fun, socializing, but also more importantly, we always want to do something helpful and give back to the community. So that's why we were thinking of, okay, we're living in a very different world now with the COVID-19 impact. And then we thought, obviously, we can't really see each other. We really miss each other. So we were thinking during this time, I have loads of free time, and I'm sure loads of people now suddenly find I'm just staying at home doing nothing. So why don't we use that time to actually learn some new skill or just sharpen the skill you already got? So that's why we came up with this campaign. It's called SkillQuest, which is, as you can see on the slide here, Power Up Your Skill. It's a series of webinars organized by VietPro, starting from mid-May until the 12th of June. So every Saturday and Sunday, we have some special guests. So for example, today we have Dieu to come and talk about the relevance of expertise. So it could be someone who has already been very successful in what they do, or maybe just someone just started their journey, but has some cool, interesting things to inspire you to learn or to sharpen your skill. And our themes of topics for these 12 webinars is very diverse, but mainly focusing on 3 things: personal development, lifestyle and well-being, and creativity. And if you like this sort of webinars, we really hope that you're gonna be very interactive, put in the chat what you think about the presentations, and also we have the chance to do the Q&As as well with our special speakers as well, so put it in the Q&A section. And so this campaign, we actually do this for a very special purpose as well. So we partner with Blue Dragon Children Foundation in order to help and support for their emergency appeal in relation to the COVID-19. So I'm just going to run you through a little bit about Blue Dragon and the appeal. So Blue Dragon is a foundation. They started in Vietnam I would say about 17 years ago. They started in 2003, so you can do the math. So throughout the time, they have been doing some tremendous work in helping everyone in Vietnam, especially people who are vulnerable, who have been facing very difficulties in life in terms of both financial support and also the mental health as well. And going back to the COVID-19 point as well, as you can imagine, everyone is impacted by this, but those already vulnerable, those already have some disadvantages, is the one that can really feel the impact right now. So that's why as VietPro, as a community, we think this is the best time for us to show some care, to show that we're all in this together and we want to do some help. So that's why we create this campaign. First of all, as you can see, for us to just connect with each other, but also we have a donation target of £3,000. So by the end of mid-June, we really hope we're going to reach the targets of £3,000 to help the Blue Dragon Foundation with their appeals to tackle the issues of COVID-19 in Vietnam. And as you can see on the slides here, there's loads of stats about how actually people really suffer from the COVID-19. You can read it yourself. But the key thing, the key message that I want to say here is every donation helps. Every little bit of help with you can really make a change in their life. So in times of deep crisis like this, solidarity is the only vaccine. This is the key things that we just want to say. And if you feel like you want to help, every little help can really help us to reach our target. So please thinking about to make a donation for us if you want to, and we're hopefully going to be able to reach our target by the 12th of June, which is our main sort of focus now at the moment. So how could you donate? So obviously, if you want to donate, there are two ways that you can do it. First of all, on the chat sections now, one of our representatives is going to put a link to the chat sections where you can literally click on that link, it goes straight to the donation page. Or the easy way, if you feel a bit lazy, all you need to do is just put your smartphone, scan the QR code now, and it's going to get you straight to the donation page. I'm going to give you about 5 seconds if you want to play around, scan the QR code now. So we're about, I think, as I checked this morning, we're about 50% of the target. So thanks a lot for people who already show support and donations. I know we still got quite a bit of a long way to go, but I strongly believe that we're definitely going to reach the target. So thank you everyone to actually come today, show the support, and we really hope that you also please keep showing us your support in the futures as well with the upcoming webinars. And in order to create and to make this very special campaign, we have some amazing partners, Overseas Vietnamese, Vietnam Finance Society, and Vietnamese Family Partnership, who have been shown tremendous help in order to help us get through this and also to make this idea happen. And also, I can't forget our art directors and designers, Sun Fan and Gideon, who's doing amazing poster, amazing artwork, as you can see on the screen now. And before we get into the reading where that Zio is going to host in literally a few minutes, just some simple house rules. As part of the webinars, only host and speaker, which is me and Zio, will have my audios and screens enabled. But later on during the Q&A sections, if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A, and then we're going to choose some most upvoted questions to answer during the webinars. And if you want to, if you put your name on, I'm going to enable you to actually directly talk to Zio, and then she can answer your questions as well. Or if you don't feel confident enough, you can also do it without putting your name on. So I'm just going to ask you on behalf, and then we're trying to run through as many questions as we can. So yeah, and of course, put your question Q&A, put your comments on the chat, be interactive. This is a session for you, and we want to make it as fun as possible. So yeah, I think that's sort of the key messages that I want to say. So just before I leave all the spotlight to our special guest today, just want to run a very quick poll just to see where everyone is and where you're joining us from. So I'm going to launch the polling now. As you can see on the screen, we're asking people, where are you from? Just a bit of ideas of our demographics. So yeah, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds to put up your votes. Okay, I'm going to end my polling now. And you can see, okay, so we got majority of people from Europe and Asia, some from North America, and 4% from Africa as well. So put it in the chat if you're from Africa. We'd love to hear from you as well.
Yes, which country in Africa?
Oh, I forgot to share the result actually here. Yeah, you can see. Okay. So yeah, we know where everyone's from now. So the spotlight come back to Hanoi now, where Zio is going to present um, your
Okay, I'm
amazing
actually in Ho Chi Minh
presentation.
City, unfortunately or fortunately.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
gonna stop sharing my screen now, and it's your turn now to
okay.
impress people with your amazing slide.
So here,
So
uh,
here you are.
let me share my screen. Okay, I'll start sharing, and then this is it. Okay, sorry, 2 seconds. Just present. Cool. All right, everyone. So thank you, Sun, for a very generous introduction.
As you
Thank you all for joining me today from wherever you are. I'm very curious about the person from Africa because I really want to go to Africa this year, but obviously it probably may not happen, but sometime in the future. So before I go into the main content, just let me give you a quick background about myself. So this is just a quick page to show you, who I am, where I'm from, what I've done, etc. So I was born and raised in Vietnam. I went to the US for college. So I went to a liberal arts college, Mount Holyoke in Massachusetts. And then after Mount Holyoke, I started working for JP Morgan, a global financial institutions. And with JP Morgan, I've been in New York, Toronto, and London. That's where I know VietPro UK and all the great people, including Sun, behind this webinar series. And then after that, I recently decided to come back to Vietnam and explore the different opportunities here. So it's been a long time away, and now I'm back in Vietnam. So it's quite interesting experience. Maybe I'll be able to share at some point. But back to this webinar. I am a longtime book lover, a bookworm, I would like to confess. I can still remember my first book, which is The Romance of Three Kingdoms, Sang Của Ye Nhi, Tam Quốc Diễn Nghĩa, which I read when I was 4, not because I was great or anything, it just, there's nothing in the house to read. At that point, it's still one of my favorite to this day. Team Cao Cao, Tao Tao all the way. In addition to being a reader, as you can see here, I've also done some work on the publishing side. So for manga and comic books lover, I consider comic book, as much as some people deride it and make fun of it and think that it's not true book, I do consider it as books, and that's also a helpful tools. I actually learned a lot from comics and mangas and made a lot of very important decisions in my life based on the mangas that I read, interestingly enough. So when I was, well, 12 or 13 or something, I think at some point I pitch and collaborate with the Kim Dong Publishing House to publish the Hikaru no Go, Kỳ Thủ Cờ Vây, a very famous manga series in Japan, in Vietnam, in Vietnam and into Vietnamese. And it's the first time that the series was introduced in Vietnam. It's the first time that non-professional team, my team, worked with a formal publishing house, and it kind of paved the way for other teams to do that. And we introduced a lot of different new things as well. So that was Kim Dong. And then later on, I also worked with Alpha Books in Vietnam to translate the book about Warren Buffett, The Making of an American Capitalist, into Vietnamese as well. Like Hikaru, it has also been, it's still in print right now. Both books are still in print, are still selling. So if you want to buy them, you can still buy them. And you know, Hikaru, I understand why it's great. I actually went to study Go because of the book. So, I think people still like it. And then Warren Buffett for sure. I don't think people will ever get sick of learning about how he makes his money and he makes his fortune. So I can foresee the book stay on forever and ever. And then lastly, let's come to Leji, which is the reason I was invited and I'm here in the first place. So I created Leji in 2017 as something out of my own need. I want to have a space to be able to share kind of with people from all over the world, regardless of physical distance. As you can see, I move around a lot. So a lot of the people that I hold dear, that I want to have conversations with, we are not necessarily in a close, close enough to each other to be able to meet and to discuss. So I create this space as a place where people can come together and share their interest in written words, in long form article, in mangas even, and to discuss what they read and learn from each other as much as from the books. Because I think human is we are social animals, and we learn from each other so much more effectively than just from books itself as well. So that is just a quick overview of myself. And in regarding the structure of the webinar, I think the name kind of explains it itself, the joy of reading and the use of bullet journaling. So in the first section, we'll explore reading as an activity, the whys of it, why we even do it, why are people so gung-ho about, oh, you need to read a book every week, 52 books a year, or a book every month, 12 books per year, etc. Like why would you people do that? And why do you feel bad that you haven't read whatever, or you haven't read as much as your colleague who's seated next to you, or you haven't read as much as your friends, etc. And then after we understand the why, then we'll get to the how. Now that we know why we want to do it, then how are we going to go around doing it? And one of the most effective hows that I've learned so far is bullet journal. So we can go into bullet journal specifically into how it can help you with reading more and you feel more enjoyable while you read. So before I start the joy of reading or the things, so let's get up. I have a small present, which is a small poll, a quick poll. Can we pull up the first poll, please?
Yeah, sure.
So please vote, and we'll see. I'm very excited to see what challenges people face. So, what challenge do you have among this one?
I feel like I've got too many challenges. I've got to
That's
admit.
why I have all of the above, because
Yeah.
people always tell me they have all the challenges. So
Yeah, but I think one of the problem with me is I'm a very good skim reader. So sometimes I just leave out loads of details when I read a book. I feel like I need I need to be more patient in order to get all the details and really get lost in the words of the book. I think probably people finished their voting now, so I'm going to end my poll and share the result for you.
Interesting.
I'm really interested I'm not interested in the books that I want and need to read 0%. I'm pretty sure at some points I don't really want to read my textbook or like my math book.
No, but you never know. All right, so that's very interesting.
Should I start?
Yeah, that those are the results. I think it's, the can't seem to finish the book that people start is a very, very common problem. I have the same problem. And I will address it I think in this webinar as well, about, how you can kind of sustain your interest in the book, sustain the habit of book reading, and also how you can know, how do you know when to give up? Some books is just not meant to be, I guess. I think it's a little bit of a controversial approach, because everybody tell you to kind of finish whatever you do, wherever you start, right? And not to give up, never to give up, which I think I agree to a certain point. But then I also think that it's good to give up sometime, or it's just not the right time for that specific book in your life, and you can always come back to them, some things like that. And then I think I enjoy reading but can't find the time is also another classic problem that I also have. And I also have another one, the combination of that too is the another one, which is there are too many books that I run to read, and I start one chapter on one, and then I give up, or not give up, but like put it aside, and then I start another chapter on another one, and then I put it aside. So So I think that adds to another problem. And I think we'll address, or I try to address all of it in this webinar, hopefully. So the way I started this webinar, now that I know your interest, is because I learned a lot of the things that I learned from all the books that I read. So I structure this webinar around the books that inform my approach to reading. So the first one, let me show, is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. Okay, I think we go, okay, all right, here, Start With Why. So this is the book cover, in case you want to, look it up after or during the presentation, hopefully after, because now I can give you a quick overview of the book. So this is one of my favorite book. It's not about reading, as with most of the book in this, but I think it give us, or at least it give me, a very interesting perspective about doing things. And one of the things that I like to do is to read. So like the title said, it starts with why. So I think a lot of the time when people want to do something, want to read books, want to read more books, want to read better, want to be well informed, they will start with, they'll Google an article like how to read better, how to read faster, how to read more books. And I'm the same. I did those Google search myself, so be assured we're in the same boat. And there are a lot of different techniques, even like very fast reading technique, even skim reading. So like there's so many skim reading techniques out there. You'll be surprised. But then I think those techniques, it's really like because I try them myself, right? You try the techniques, you learn, but then you still somehow, one, you may be able to read the book, but you don't enjoy the process of reading as much. For example, like how skim reading make you kind of lose out the details. Or two, sometimes the technique is not even helpful that much. Some of them may be helpful, but from my personal experience, most of them are not that helpful. So so I think the Start With Why really get into the heart of it. Instead of, I think a lot of the time we go from the outside in. We start with the what. Okay, I need to read book A. And then we go to the how. Okay, I'm going to buy the book. I'm going to put it on my table and open it. And then after, we just go around with the how and the what. And again, sometimes, we cannot finish it, or we get frustrated with the book, or whatever reason, we're like just kind of going back and forth between this how and what, and never really address the main question, which is why. Why do you even need to do this in the first place? Why do you even need to read this book, right? So in his book, Simon Sinek make an argument that before you do anything, which I think is actually a very simple argument, but he put it very elegantly in the book. So I highly recommend you read it and not just listen to my very quick summary of it. He started by saying, before you start doing anything, and in this case, before you, you read a book, just really think about why do you want to do that, and what is the purpose. And like the title of this, I think about that as well. Like, why do I want to read book? And I think the main purpose should be out of joy. Of course, there are probably a lot of other purpose. For example, like your math textbooks, or your, GMAT, CFA, IELTS, whatever the name the test is that you're doing. But I think fundamentally, we should think about why. And most of us reading in this COVID time is for recreational. So the importance on joy is so much more. And I think we should all remember that, because that will give us so much more kind of drive and power. And also it will make our lives just so much nicer. Doing something that you enjoy and like, versus doing something and feel really frustrated about it. And knowing your why can inform a lot of what you go forward doing. It can inform your how and your what. So in order to do that, I think we should all take a little break, and not take a little, but explore our whys. Can we have the second poll, please?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to quickly run the second poll, which is, why do you want to read books?
Yep. And I was guessing from Sun's answers before that the reason he wants to read book is the number one reason he wants to escape. But his scheming techniques, his amazing scheming techniques that help him to go through a lot of books and retain a lot of things kind of hinder him in this process because it's harder to be.
Yeah, but the third point is actually really good as well, because sometimes I do feel like I want to be like a social reader, if you know what I mean. It's just more like people talk a lot about certain books, and I feel like I really want to know about it as well. I really want to like be able to discuss about it. So that's also a really good reason. So I'm going to end my polling now, and let's see the results.
Ooh, all right.
Interesting.
So, see, so a lot of people agree with you on the last one. Everybody around me is talking about a book, and I want to be knowledgeable. I love that people are honest about that. The main problem, not the main problem, but the main drive is still to want and need to learn new things. But there's a significant amount of people who just want to escape, which I think makes perfect
It's a
sense.
fair comment, isn't it? Yeah, I do think so. Sometimes I read books just because I'm stressed, or just like, I get bored of the reality. So let's open a book and escape from it, the reality. So yeah, that's
all right, so now I don't know if the answer come as a surprise to you, or I mean you as in the general audience, it come as a surprise to yourself. But I think now hopefully you're a little bit more informed about why do you want to read books, why do you want to do a specific thing. So let's go to the next step, right? Let's close this poll, go to the next step. So now that you know a little bit about why do you want to read book, we can, as I mentioned, your why will inform your subsequent actions. So you can start to build like your reader profile, who you are as a reader, this is quite exciting to me at least, because I think role playing is fun. And just to think of yourself as, because I think, we define ourselves in a lot of ways as workers, as, family members, daughters, sons, husband, wives, brother, sister, etc. Right? And those are the things that are kind of like defined for us. Like for example, family roles, or those are the things that stay with us for a very long time, and it gets a little bit boring. Like, am I really that person? But with this, you can be a little bit like, it will create more. I hope, like with the poll, will create more self-awareness, which is always good, hopefully, and then it will be fun. So, so I think to just give an example. So when I mentioned reader profile, it's like, thinking about what kind of reader are you? Do you read? I think the most common divide is, do you read fiction or non-fiction? Do you want to escape into worlds like CERN, or do you want to need and want to learn something new, which is going through fictions like a lot of people in this webinar? And then are you a diverse reader, or are you a focused reader? Diverse reader are people like me, I guess, who can read anything. I told Sun I can even read like supermarket pamphlets. And I actually do enjoy reading supermarket pamphlets. They're very soothing for some reason.
Sorry, just to interrupt. We have a bit of chat before we started, and we talk about playing games, and it was like, I read everything about games, but I just never played games in my life. And I find it really interesting.
I have huge respect for gamer. And they have a lot of patience. They have to repeat things again and again and again until they get through the stuff. Whereas if I read, I just finish one chapter and I'm done. And I can estimate the time I finish the chapter. So yeah, so that can tell something about me. But about you, as in the audience, like, are you a diverse reader? You read a lot of different things, and what goes with diverse reader is that you get bored easily by one topic. So you jump from one topic to another. That's why I jump from one book to another and then kind of just leave them all there. Or you are a very focused reader. So I have friends who just read fiction or just read nonfiction. And if they just read nonfiction, they can read very narrow into their field, like they only read nonfiction about computer science or only academic journals. I have a friend here who actually read academic journal for fun. You know who you are. So, you know, just imagining that. And then when you were able to build the profile, just think about what brings you joy while reading, right? Is it the material itself? A lot of the time it's the material itself, right? So, so when you feel frustrated with the book, because I think the book, like anything, the journey has it up and down, right? There are parts of the book that you're like, oh, I love this. This is great. Or this world is amazing. Or I am learning great things. And there are part of the book that you're just like, what is this? What is going on? What the author is trying to say? And but so when you hit that wall, that's a lot of time when people give up, right? When people say that, oh, I can't seem to finish the book. That's when they come to a boring part, they come to a very complicated part, etc. So when you come to that part, just try to remember, you know, what you want to get from this book in the first place. So like War and Peace and those Russian prince and princesses talking about all the trivial things, and you're like, oh, why do I want to spend my time learning about all the trivial things? But remember, there are certain parts, all those things, that boring things need to happen so that the explosion scenes can come to place, the duel scene can come to play, and you can feel very excited about that. And also for the nonfiction's book too, the complicated part is where they actually try to explain something that you are new to you, that you don't know before. So maybe it's actually the hardest part is the part that you want to be focused the most on. So I think remembering why you start with the material and what you want from it in the first place is a great thing to get you through those hard parts. And another thing that can be helpful to remember about what brings you joy while reading is I think reading as a kind of recreational thing, it should be a part of our life. And it just, so, you know, anything that around that can help you read or help with reading would be nice. So, you know, if you know that you want to read because you want to feel sophisticated, I mean, like, you know, it's vain, but everybody's vain, I guess, or want to be able to, that you're like, okay, so I want to feel like a sophisticated person. What would I do? You know, you can have your love seat, sofa, armchair, very comfortable one. And you can have your books, and you can have your glass of wine, a cup of tea. So you sit there, you open the book, you sip the tea, and you feel very sophisticated or relaxed while doing so. Then I think it really aids with the reading process. Like, or I personally find myself read better if I have a better reading location. I think all of us are. So you can set that up in your house, or go to a nice, well, I mean, in Vietnam we can, sorry. In London, I go to Foy's all the time when I have the chance. Just a very nice place to read, right? And then also about, you know, a lot of people here express that they want to be able to discuss about the book with other people, right? So when you reach the part when it's like hard, you're like, okay, try to remember what other people were talking about this book and how would this relate. And then, you know, you may, instead of just reading and going through the pages, you can think about, okay, they ask about this. How do I find that in this book, to at least even counter and have a conversations about that. So I think it make it a lot more exciting to do it. And so you can see, when you were able to build your reader profile, understanding why you want to read, you know, you can understand what brings you joy and provide that joy more, so you can enjoy the reading process more, I guess. So I think that's hopefully a little bit thorough exploration into our whys to read. And the next step, and well, I did talk a little bit about the how to, like what brings you joy while reading, but I think for a much more kind of specific and structured approach, we'll go to our second book of the webinar, one of my favorite, which is The Atomic Habits by James Clear. So the book is here with the cover on the upper right corner of the presentation if you want to check it out. Yeah, so a funny story about Atomic Habits. This is, I was given this book by someone when I first met him for the first time. You know, that's not a really, yeah, that's not a really normal story when someone met you for the first time and they gave you a book. But through the grapevine, I was told that everybody who works for him, and actually there are a lot of people who works for him, was given the same book. So I guess I'm not that special. I thought I was special, but then it turns out I was not special. He just liked it that much, which I think it's a good testimony for it, and the fact that I use it here also too. So Atomic Habits by James Clear, as the name say, is basically about how you can create and maintain small habits. And the argument is that small habits on a daily basis will have atomic, exponential results over time. So you've ever seen the graph of like, if you just improve 1% every day, you'll go like this, which is very exponentially high. And then if you don't, then it go like that. But let's focus on about this part. I highly recommend the book as well. Like I think the author did mention in the book that a lot of the things that he said has already been said in other books, which I appreciate, because a lot of people write books and they made it feel like they invent, I don't know, bread or the will or whatever. But James Clear didn't do the case. He repeatedly repeat that, this is nothing new under the sun, but he really was able to kind of combine them all together and make a good case out of it. So for our specific purpose in wanting to, read more and enjoy reading more, what I think we can apply from the book is the first one, which is understanding the habit loops. I think reading is a habit, just like any other habits, right? And James broke it down really well, that there are 4 main components to a habit. The first component is a cue, right? So the cue can be anything. It can be sight, sound, smell, but human being a visual animal. Again, I think I mentioned us as animal a lot of times today, social and then visual, but that's true. Anyway, so human being a visual animal will be very much more reminded by the sight, but sound and other things also help. So for example, like if you walk by a pizza place or a barbecue place, you smell the smell and you're like, oh, pizza, barbecue, I want. So that's a cue. After the cue come the craving, right? Which is when you really want to have a pizza or a barbecue. And then the third is the response, which is you go and buy pizza and barbecue. And the fourth is the rewards, which is you feel happy, sinking your teeth into that juicy barbecue or that juicy pizza. So that is a complete loop of a habit. And then after that, you have done I think there's some cats fighting in the background. My cat is fighting the neighbor's cat. So pardon the cats fight, literally. Anyway, so after the habit loops is complete, then the reward is what it will create another habit loops, and the loops just go on and go on, and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. The same thing go for reading, right? The cue for reading can be you hear people in the office talking about a book and you want to be able to and then people talk and then you crave like, oh, if I read it, then I can talk intelligently about it. And then hopefully you come to respond that you actually pick up the book and read it. And then the reward is that the next day you come armed with all your knowledge and then wow everybody, including your managers, about your knowledge. So one way that we can, use this understanding of the habit loop to help with our reading habit, it's basically, quite straightforward actually, which is making the cue very easy. So for example, if I never buy any books, every time somebody talk about it, I have to search the book, try to find the name. Sometimes I just hear in passing. And I have to actually go on Kindle and buy it or go to store and buy it. It takes a lot of time and energy. But if I just have the books available to me in my bedside table, on my bedside table, in the bathroom, you know, whenever I think I can have some free time, then, you know, I can look at it. Like, and it's true for me as well. Some, like, I would put the book like close to the TV. So whenever I'm thinking of like binging on a Netflix series, I'll be like, I may need to choose a Netflix series, which is not easy these days because there's so many choice. Then I'm like, oh, instead of choosing a Netflix series, there is a book already available next to me. I can just open and read it. So, or maybe set up, you know, your space for a specific space for reading. So anytime I walk in the house and I see that chair or I see that seat or I see whatever, that's a cue for me to like, oh, remind me of reading. So making the cue easy, making the cue accessible. And then the craving is the feeling when you think about something, not the actual work. Actually, I think a lot of psychologists has figured out that the craving is actually more enjoyable than the actual activity. So when you crave a vacation or when you crave and you imagine, which is basically you imagine you're on a vacation or you imagine you're doing something nice, the imagination is actually more enjoyable than you're actually doing it. Yeah, a little bit sad, but that it can help to our advantage, which is it's all tied with our emotions. A lot of the productivity or a lot of our drive or decisions are tied with our emotions. So if you can associate reading with pleasant emotions, then the craving can be a pleasant craving. So instead of thinking about when say, oh, I have to read this 500 pages tome, you can have a pleasant like, oh my God, there's 500 pages for me to explore. You know, that feeling when you read a very good book and you're like, oh my God, there's only like 50 pages left. I don't want it to end, that kind of thing. So so that's why I said we should not want to make reading frustrating, because once you associate with frustration, it makes it so much harder to do it the next time, right? And then the response, I think, make the response easy as well. Make it available so that you can actually read it. And then, you know, finally the rewards. I hope we find something, you know, fun to while reading books, and then you can enhance the rewards by, you know, discussing it with others, so that you can have like a social activity out of it, or write a post about it like I usually do in my book club, so I can share with people and I can get likes. Likes are important. I mean, I don't want to say that, but Facebook spend millions of dollars on psychologists for a reason. Social media companies spend, you know, millions and millions of dollars on psychiatrists for a reason. They understand how human body work and how our brain work, right? So I think that's one. The habit loops is the first part right here of the book that I think is very helpful and we can use it. Another one, which is the kind of the specificity, right? Like you, if you read a lot of productivity kind of manual, they say like try to make your goal as specific as possible. So this is also quite similar. Like I will read book, or read X book, or read, you know, this one nonfiction book at a specific time. So maybe 8 p.m. after works are done, dinner is done, then you're fine for the next day. And then at location, it'd be like at my favorite reading nook, or at a quiet cafes, or maybe even in the bathroom. A lot of people love reading in the bathroom, which I understand because it's the place that nobody should disturb you. So yeah, so even in the bathroom, just set your bathroom up very nicely, candles, jazz, whatever float your boat, or in the bathtub. A lot of people like to do that, right? So see, even if hopefully, even if you, when you just imagine that scenario, it makes you feel a little bit better. Our imagination, humans' imagination is amazing. And then when you feel better and you anticipate, you know, see the dopamine anticipation, and wanting anticipation and having something, then it will make you associate reading with a pleasant activity. But I mentioned the habit loops. I mentioned the specific kind of I will do this at this time at this location. But those things are mostly applies for like pleasure reading, like reading that we really enjoy. So what about reading that you find it a little bit hard to do? You know, some hard, long nonfiction like Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. Everybody wants to say that they read it, but it's long and it's boring. Or I know another example, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Every single friend's house I've been to have the books. And I asked, but I think maybe 30% of them actually read it. Not no offense to them. I do think that the book can be like just 1/3 of its length. So Daniel can write a lot shorter, but him being, you know, a researcher, he just wants to write every single detail. So no offense to people. So what should you do to combat that? So I think one of the things that it's a good idea is habit stacking, and this actually will come back and tie back to, you know, your reader profile and why you want to read. So this idea of habit stacking is that you pair a habit, in this case reading or finish reading, with a current and existing habit or behavior, so that it can be kind of like a cue for you. For example, after you brush your teeth and wash your face and get in bed, then you read, right? So that's a cue. But to make it even more effective is to stack the habit, you know, reading, which is a habit that you want to develop, with something that you really enjoy doing. So this also ties back with the habit loops, right? Because if you feel happy or feel something enjoyable, you would want to repeat it again. So, I mean, reading that one chapter of Capital in the 21st Century may not be the most enjoyable thing in the world at the exact moment while you're reading it. But then if you pair it with something, so this is something that I do myself as well, because sometimes I don't feel like to read certain very dense text and reports and, you know, industry reports or company reports. I would be like, okay, if I read one chapter of this or 20 pages of this, then I'll get to read mangas, like the latest manga, Attack on Titan. Then I'll get one chapter of Attack on Titan. So, you know, even then I have to go through it, and it's quite painful. I'm like, think about Levi, think about Attack on Titan, or think about One Piece, you know. Or you can, it doesn't have to be another book. You can tie it with like, you know, after this, I can watch an episode or half an episode of Love is Blind. I don't know, whatever is your guilty pleasure TV show, Love is Blind, or what is it, Tiger King in the US,
Well,
I
that's
think it
too
is,
many.
Crash Landing on You, you know, whatever is your medicine or poison, just do it. So that's it, Atomic Habits, and what I was able to take away from it for our reading. So I think now, you know, after just overview of the book, I can come to like my personal tips, like, and they can be personal. They're personal, so they can be a little bit controversial. Oh, why is it the slide jump? I think the slide jump. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. My personal tips. Oh, actually, I can go straight into bullet journal. So I'll leave my personal tips toward the end because I think it is precious. So I'll give it at the end. Can we have the third poll actually, the one about bullet journal? So we'll continue our discussions about the how, and the how this time is even more specific, which is bullet journal.
Sure, I'm gonna run it straight away.
All right. So do you know what bullet journaling is, Sun?
Yeah, of course. From doing the dry run with you yesterday, I know
Oh,
everything
before
about
that.
it now. Now I get. Well, I know about it. I always thought it's really good to do it, but then it's really, as you're saying, as you explained earlier, it's hard to put it in a habit as well. There's one you do one sort of one book, you feel so good about yourself, but then you just you really have to keep it going. I think that's the difficulty. But yeah, I think some people actually think the same with me. They tried before but for some reason they're not
Can we
successful.
see the results? Did you see
Yeah,
them?
okay, I'm gonna end my polling now and I'm gonna share you the results.
Ooh, 50% of people don't know what bullet journaling is. Great. So I'm going to introduce it to them.
Interesting, there's 0% who pull up bullet journal and use it to assist with my reading process.
No, I am providing a service here. I'm adding value here, hopefully, for everybody. And there are people who bullet journal regularly in here as well, that people who try it, significant amount of people have tried. Okay, cool. All right, so let's come to our third book of today. So even if you don't, do anything, I think you can come away from this webinar being able to talk about 3 books, and they're all quite popular books, I guess. So hopefully that's one of the value I add after this webinar. So bullet journal. Let's go to, so this is the, so actually the book about it was published last year in 2019. The author, Ryder Carroll, is actually just around our age, a little bit older. So he's not some guru. Yeah, he's a product designer in somewhere in America, right, around our age. And bullet journal, I think there are a lot of stuff about it online, and everybody can go and Google and find themselves. Just a quick description of it is that it's a methodology, and this is from Ryder Carroll himself explaining it. It's best described as a mindfulness practice disguised as a productivity system. And I think it really ties into the flow of our webinar today, which is it's designed to help us organize our what, which is what books that we want to read, how many, how long or how deep that we want to read it, while we remain mindful of our why, which is why we want to read in the first place. Yeah, so let's go to the specific, how can we use bullet journal to help with our reading process, which is a specific. Right, okay. So Bujo, let's go here. Bullet journal, or Bujo for short. If you are in the space of bullet journal, you get there for reading. Right, right off the bat, I would have to say I take one for the team. I sacrifice during the screenshot here are from my own bullet journal. They are not very pretty. They're not very pretty, but the team convinced me to put them there. They say, oh, by seeing what you did, people may not feel discouraged. They might feel encouraged because that's not as pretty as the stuff that you usually see online. Okay, son, why are you zooming in? I feel that you do my stuff. I'm a little bit self-conscious now.
No, don't worry. Yeah, it is good. Very nice handwriting. That's all I want to say.
I know that you're just being nice. Anyway, so this is a screenshot from my own bullet journal, and I'll come back to them later. But I think there are 3 use of bullet journaling for reading that I find very useful, which is the first one is tracking, and that will help create and maintain the habit of reading. So as I mentioned before, in the Atomic Habits, James Clear mentioned that one of the way for us to maintain our habits is to actually, he mentioned tracking as well. And one of the way that tracking can help you is that it can help you create this kinds of sense of accomplishment, right? Like to make it more enjoyable. So you have a list of books that you are reading or want to read, and anytime you finish it, you get a tick mark. You're like, yay. It's like in kindergarten when you get a star when you behave for the day. So it's kind of similar to be like that. And it can be very simple. So you can see what I did here with just the number, book number, the page number here, and I'll come back to this later, is about the page number of the bullet journal that I write some impressions or summaries or some things about the book so specific that I read. And it's very simple, just like, the name of the book, and then the author, and then the genre, because sometimes I want to just give an overview and see how many fiction versus nonfiction versus poetry or biography that I've read in a year. Because I think I have been quite heavily focused on nonfictions in recent years, the drive to learn something useful, to learn something new. But I find that fiction, or there are recent researches actually that say that fiction books are equally, even if not even more important in this day and age, because with data, with computer, with AI, there is an information overload. You actually have more books about topics that you want to know, and you have more information to learn than our human capacity to learn. So what we need to our what is our human unique strength is actually imagination and combinations of new things and etc. And imagination come from, and fictions is one of the great venue to learn and practice imagination, because every time you read a fiction you imagine and you create a new world in your mind, right? So that's why it's very useful. So I mean, I like fiction as well, not just because of the research that I start wanting to read more fiction, but the research also encourage me to read more fiction. So that's why I want to keep track of it, to make sure that, oh, it has been a while since I read a good fiction. So I want to read. And also, other than imagination, I think another thing that fiction does really well, and also it's another very important skills in this new day and age, is it teaches about empathy. It teaches how to see things from other people's perspectives, how to, so actually I was talking to someone the other day about a series of young adult fictions that I read when I was like, I don't know, in high school. And at the time I was going to a high school in a city, right? Like I guess most of us do. So it's just basically, school and then home, and then, either I take my bike or I walk from home to school. And it's basically quite routine. But then the young adult series is about uh, students who from this province, the highlands of Vietnam. So because they're from kind of a rural area, and their towns do not have a high school. So in order to go to the high school, they actually have to go to like a big city, like 40 kilometers away, and they have to, stay, rent a room and basically go to high school renting. I'm like, this is amazing, because, me here being under control, teenager under my parents' control, but someone have all the autonomy that I want in the world. And it just opened a totally different perspective. And I was talking to someone, and she was actually from that kind of town, and she had to rent a place, and she's like, yeah, it's a, and then we instantly connect, because now I partially understand what she was talking about when she said that she has to be completely independent at the age of, I would say, 14, which is a very young age to be completely independent in Vietnam or anywhere. Anyway, so I think those are the two. Well, I think I divert a little bit, but talking about fictions. So come back here, just the genre, and then the R, which is if I finish reading them. You can see there's a lot of not full tick, not full cross. So those are books that I still haven't finished. So don't worry if in your friend list there are a lot of people who said that, oh, I finished like 40 books and it's only June. No, I do have friends who, even because I do the Legi virtual reading club. So somebody was posting about all the book that they read, and then a friend of mine private messaged me. He literally private messaged me. He's like, "What do you think about the recent post? That's too much book. I think you need to focus on 1 or 2 books." Anyway, but so that's just mean everybody's different. And then so you really can do this however you want to. And okay, sorry, let's come back. And I think tracking it really help you kind of create and maintain the habit of reading, and then you can kind of have an overview of what you read in a year as well. Oops, let's keep thinking. And that can be very helpful, I think. And then why you are bullet journaling is also great for taking notes. So I think one of the complaint that people usually say to me, and I have So myself, it's just we read, but then we don't retain a lot, especially with us skimmers, that we skim so much, and right after we read it for a presentation or for whatever, for conversations, we remember, but then just a week later or half a month or a month later, somebody was talking about the exact topic, and you're like, dang, I definitely read a book on that topic, but now I cannot recall whatever the book was trying to say. So I think one of the way that you can, okay, anyway, you can do that is by taking notes. And this here is not, it's my not very pretty note about, so I'm trying to learn about permaculture. So this is kind of just me kind of scribbling down one of the permaculture design process. So it doesn't have to be pretty. It can be, you know, as whatever as you want, as long as it serves the purpose. And I think, so you may ask, like, why bullet journal and not just like a normal notebook? I think here it's good for bullet journal because I think of the system. And if you read more about it, you understand the categorizing system. So for example, I usually, this happened to me too, before I would read a book, I would find a notebook or a Google Drive folders or something, and I wrote some notes about it. But then when I try to find it, I cannot find it. I was like, where is that note? I need to find that note, right? So with bullet journal, that's why you see the page number here, right? So I'll be like, okay, so I want to learn about this. This is page number something in my notebook. And then, okay, so what about atomic habits? Let me try to find it. It's page 71. So actually I have my bullet journal here. It's page 71. Let me see. 71. Actually go into it. 70, 71. Yeah, lo and behold, atomic habits. So I can kind of very easily search up that page, and I don't have to write the whole note in that page. The page can also be atomic habits. Okay, my cat. Anyway, sorry for the interruption. It can be atomic habits, you know, folder something something in. All right. Sorry, really need to control this cat.
Need attention. So yeah,
Okay.
everyone, your cat might be. She might.
Yeah.
Want attention.
Anyway, so cat, say hello to everybody. This naughty cat thing. Anyway, so I can kind of you know, easily, so I can organize. So that's why I mentioned bullet journal can help me organize and learn better, because as psychologists has found out, our memories are plastic, which is, it can be enhanced, it can be edited. So the more I recall about something, even the fact that I write it down, I put it in the reference, it will help create this kind of reference code in my mind so that I can remember it more. And then lastly is just to remember to have fun. Among all of these things, I mean, there's a lot of tips here, there are a lot of to-dos, but I think in the most important thing is just to have fun, to enjoy, just to learn to relax as much as possible and to unleash your creativity. And I mean, when I mention unleash creativity and have fun, most people say, oh, I don't like drawing, I don't want to draw, or I don't want to create fancy things. I think it doesn't have to be that way. It can be, so for example, like you like certain part about the book, but you're very frustrated with certain arguments by the author. Or you think that the organizations of the book is not to the way that you want it to be. You think that it can be argued a lot better if you rearrange things. Feel free to rearrange. Feel free to write whatever essays, or just say this book is very bad, I don't like it, into your journal. It may, it's a waste of time, you know. So it can may unleash some of your frustration or anger or whatever with book, you know. Some people do angry reading for fun. I'm not that one person, but if you are, then you know, there you go. You can be creative in different ways. So that is toward the end of my bullet journal for reading, and then we'll come to the personal tip section. I thought of doing it before, but I'm like, no, I'll save it for later, because it's a little bit, you know, maybe it can be controversial. So first thing is talking about unfinished business. So I mentioned it previously that I encourage people, or from my perspective, if I can go back, 5 years ago, whatever, and tell myself one thing about this, I'll be say, don't be afraid to start and then put a book away. I don't think a lot of people recommended it enough because I think we now understand that one of the biggest motivations for us doing anything, including reading, is the dopamine, and you want to create more dopamine, more reward, so you can keep doing it as a habit, right? And if you just try to really hard to push through a book that you don't enjoy, two things will probably happen. I mean, maybe you'll just finally you enjoy the book. Most of the time you will, but I think in certain cases you'll end up being frustrated with the book or with reading, like reading is not for me, I cannot finish this or that, or with yourself, like why can't I get it? Like everybody say this is great, they learn a lot from it, why am I not learning anything? And I think we don't want any of these outcomes. A lot of the time books, like people, come to it at the right time, at the right place. So for my personal experience, for example, when I was in college, I was, I heard a lot about Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master. And so I did check some of his books out from the library, my college library. And I started reading it. I'm like, man, like I understand what he's saying, but like, I don't get why people think he's such a great person. And maybe because, me in my college year was young and naive and everything was like, I don't have any of those worries and stuff. So I never finished any of his book that I check out. I think the furthest I went through is like maybe chapter 2 or chapter 3 of something. So quite early on. It's so too long ago that I can't remember, but I did get a little further in some other books, but I give up on him at that point. But about 2-3 years ago or 5 years ago, I came back to Thich Nhat Hanh and I'm like, now I understand what he's trying to say. So I think some books, it will come to you at the time that it will come to you. So don't get frustrated. Enjoy the best out of whatever you can enjoy. And maybe, just if it's a classic and people keep recommending it to you again and again and again, then sometimes just give it second try or third try if by chance. But as long as you feel lightly about it, you feel like, oh, I have to finish it because everyone's talking about it, I think it will create a lot more opportunities for you to get to know the book, for the book to get to know you, and for you guys to learn from each other, right? So that's a little bit of an uncontroversial advice. And I think actually there's some research supporting my argument as well about, there's a word in Japanese for books that you buy but you don't read. So they say that even the books that you buy but you don't read can serve a purpose, in the sense that it can make you have a general understanding just from reading the titles and the summary, I guess, about what you want and what you don't want, and understanding about yourself too, like what kind of book that make you read. Is it because the title, the cover, the summary, the topics, the author, all of that thing that inform your decisions, right? And then scheming, we talk about scheming. Our best friend, our worst enemy. I think scheming is really good for when we read nonfictions, when we read reports, when we need to learn something new. But for fiction, when we want to really immerse into the world, it's really tough. I hear your pain on it, because it also happened to me. I think for that case, what we can do is to try to limit scheming by, for example, limit only 30 pages a day to a certain book. So even if you skim the 30 pages, right, you cannot skim 50 pages because or 100 pages. So you have a time between this 30 pages and that 30 pages to kind of, if you are interested enough to come back and reread the 30 pages so that get more details or go forward more. So maybe just some tactic to kind of limit yourself, and then also try to try to be a little bit calmer while reading, I guess, which is also a good exercise, because I think a lot of the time that we skim because we are a little bit anxious, like we want to be able to finish this in a specific amount of time. But I think if we finish this and we don't get the results, which is the immersion in the world that we want, then maybe we should change our perspective and just relax and be a little bit more, approach it a little bit differently. And then finally, better together. I mentioned books before. Books are more enjoyable when shared. So that's why I create the virtual book club, because that I can share with other people, and it's actually came out because I missed my college. I missed the college education where, everybody have an assignment. Everybody in the class have to read the same book. And then a week later, we have to come together and discuss the book. So I found that I remember it a lot more. I enjoy the book a lot more. And so I create Legi just to have that. And I think I do have that. I have my college professor joining, and he comments on books. And then when I post about the book, like Principle by Ray Dalio. So Ray Dalio is a very famous hedge fund manager in the US, and he's one of the most successful hedge fund manager, and also a most controversial, because he has a specific leadership style that can sometimes be described as cultish. So Principle is basically his book explaining a lot of the book is about explaining what he does and his leadership style and his principle, quote unquote. So I post about it, and obviously people have a lot of opinions about Ray's and his principles. And then within the group, there is someone who actually worked for Ray Dalio, worked for Cambridge Associates. So that person was able to provide perspective of what is the reality inside Ray's organization. So I think, better together, do it with your friends, expand. Reading is usually seen as a solitary endeavor, and it is most of the time, but I don't think it have to be so. It can be very communal. So I think one of the break the ice things for my first year of college is like the whole class was given one book to read. So it's like the first thing, because people from, you go to college, you come from a lot of different avenues of life. And then, but, to create this one thing when you can have something in common. And maybe that's why the one who gifted me Atomic Habits gave all of his employees the book. So maybe they have one thing in common to discuss other than complaining about him, I guess. So that's his tactic. And then finally, I think is come back here. You do you. I think, as much as I say about my approach or what the books recommend, and there are so many articles out there, I think the main thing is that, sorry, is that you are unique and you do whatever fit you best. And then finally, so after this webinar, tomorrow, you want to, it's always happen with what you want to do tomorrow, what you're going to do. So I think, you can explore your whys a little bit more if you haven't done so today through the polls and through the webinar. And then you can figure out the specificity, when or where, when do you want to start reading? How do you want to start, for CERN, for example, your assignments, maybe 20 pages per day of War and Peace, so that you can fully immerse. Actually, I know there is a book where the author did that. He literally did 20 or 30 pages per day of War and Peace and kind of record his process. I'll send you the book. It's called The End of Absence. It's about our addiction to social media, and he tried to combat that by...
Sounds like the book for me.
War and Peace. Yeah, that sounds like for you. Anyway, and then, third, you can create a reading tracker, either tracking the book you read, like I did with the Legi tracker, or tracking the number of pages. You can, up to page 1,200 something. Anyway, and then join a reading club, like Legi Virtual Reading is on Facebook. You can search the group on Facebook, and, be part of a community. And then finally, just start a book and have fun. So I think that should be it. Hopefully I don't run over time, and then it's time for Q&A.
Yeah, not at all. And just to recap with you guys as well, we just post a link in the chat sections of your Leggy reading clubs as well. So visit, so people can just click on that if you're interested in joining her on the reading journey. So before we come back to Zio and her lovely cat, I just wanna just quickly go back to sort of doing my last mission of the day, which is just to remind you about our donations target. So if I just steal your screen for literally 1 minute, if that's okay. And then, yeah, just really, again, just a reminder of if you find this webinar helpful and if you want to be a part of our campaign, please go to our donation page, or you can just put your phone and scan it to the QR code over there on the bottom left of the screen. And then, of course, what's next is really just follow our Facebook page. I know some of you asked the questions of, there's going to be more webinar coming up. Yeah, the answer is yes. We have already been halfway through, so there's going to be a lot of more content to follow. So we're going to have a public speaking webinar next Saturday, and more to be confirmed on Sunday, and then of course in the next few weeks as well. And please also share your SkillQuest campaign, all the events with your friends, your Facebook friends, your Instagram friends, your TikTok friends, literally everyone, so that we can all be a part of this and we can all share, learn, bouncing ideas together. And also, if you can, just encourage them to look at our donation page as well, and just to think about if you want to be a part of this big sort of purpose that we're trying to do. So yeah, I'm sure you're going to have loads of questions, because I've been trying to obviously monitor all the questions and all the chats as well. There are loads of good chats, loads of comments on the chats as well. I'm sure you can read it later, but we just gonna run through some of the most voted questions for now, and then I'll let some of you directly talk to Zio as well to answer the question. So the most upvoted questions come from V Huing. So I'm gonna let you, if you're still in the chat, I'm gonna allow you to talk, and you can say hi to Zio directly. So I believe I just unmute you. So please say hello if you can. Hello.
I think you're still muting her, or
Yeah.
she's muting herself.
Okay. I have no idea. I tried to click unmute, but for some reason, it doesn't really work. Okay, so let me just help you. Sorry, Viewing. Let me just ask the questions, and then you can answer as well. So Viewing's saying, and I think that's a problem everyone has, is I'm normally stuck in details and enjoy the details when I read. Is it bad, or should I skim more often since there's so many books? And the second question is, I want to practice summarizing the book. What's the best way to do this?
So we actually have the opposite problem than you, Sun. She's really into the details. It's really hard to say. I'm not sure, it's hard to say if it's good or bad. I think it's my litmus test, my kind of measure of things is always whether or not you enjoy the process of reading, and you want to read more. I think if you enjoy the details, and I think everybody say the devils is in the details, the lovely is in the detail as well. So go ahead and enjoy it. But there is a problem that there are so many books out there for us to read that sometimes we get impatient and we're like, oh, I'm stuck on this for the past 2 months, whereas my friends have been through 5 different ones. Then I think it's the answer may not be whether or not to sacrifice on the detail, but to think more about organizing our life, or organizing our reading habit, or organizing something else, so that we can enhance, you can read more, or read more books while still not sacrificing on the details. So maybe I think that, you know, if it is especially fiction, I would not recommend to skip the details, because I think that's where all the rich imaginations come from. If it's nonfiction, it really depends on what you read it for. If it's for pleasure and there's no deadline to finish it, then I would say, you know, go ahead. But so I think mainly is to rethink about our you know, our time organizing principles. You know, if you can, maybe some book that it's easier to read, you can read later in the day, and you can enjoy it more with the details. And some books that are harder to read, maybe you can read earlier in the days, or however works for you, so that you can go through them faster. And also just really think about, again, I think it's about the question of why, right? Like, why do we want to read? So this is essentially my friend who private messaged me at night because he saw this post about someone on Leji who read, like, I don't know, 30 books in like a month or something like that. And he's like, don't you think that we should read less but understand more about the book that we read? Then I think that's a very fair, fair statement as well. So anything that float your boat, I say.
Okay.
I think there's a second questions in V questions as well that I saw about, like, writing a summary for a book. Do we see it?
So, yep. So her second question is, I want to practice summarizing the books.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the best way to do this?
So V, as usual, you're cheating. So, because you're supposed to ask one questions, but you bundle it into two. So I'll try to answer it quickly. I think, yeah, I think first thing, you know, practice makes perfect. So maybe try to just summarize the book and share it with friends, or however, see how it goes. Maybe just give your, like, start easy first, start with something that is easy to summarize. And then remember, it's from your own perspective. So, you know, it can be, anything can be written however long or short that you want. So you can write like a one sentence, right? Like, you know, for example, this webinar, this is about the joy of reading, how to enjoy reading more. Or you can go into like deeper analysis and get into more details. And I don't think you have a problem with more details because you love details. So I think your problem will be trying to make it short. But I think practice makes perfect. Just try to practice. And we can talk more about that privately. So yeah.
Okay. So second questions. Oh, that's a good one. This is for me. Do you have any tips for reading faster while not sacrificing on content?
That's very interesting. I think, you know, we kind of go in the same, a little bit in the same vein as these questions, but not exactly the same. So I have the same questions as well, especially with nonfictions or work-related or projects-related books. So, you know, especially when you do research about a topic, you have to read a lot about that topic in a short amount of time, right? And you don't want to sacrifice, you want to really understand them as well. I think there's one personal tips that I wasn't able to put into the webinar, but I think is very helpful, is the more the better, and the use of the table of contents. If you know me, you know that I love table of contents. That's like the first thing that I read about the book. And actually sometimes the table of contents, like, I talk about unfinished business before. There are books that I just pick up and put away. There are books that I pick up and read the table of contents and put away. Especially if it's in an area that I am familiar with, because, you know, I mean, there's a lot of knowledge in the world, yes, but it's not easy to invent new things or invent new approach, right? So that's why I also mentioned that I appreciate James Clear, because he did say that, you know, the things that he wrote is not new. The things that he wrote down in his book, most of them are not new. They're based on psychological research. So they've been out there forever, but he just kind of compiled them and put them in an easy way, a more approachable way, right? So especially if you read for research, right? If you read the table of contents, a lot of the time you can really kind of tell what the book is trying to say, what the main argument is, and what the content is. So a lot of the time the contents, I was like, no, like, I've seen this argument did before very, very well. I don't think I should spend time reading this book. Or even I read the table of contents, I'm like, okay, I've seen this argument before. I'm interested in what else, or maybe what details. So again, come back to these questions. The devils are in the details. What new details, new example, new ways that they can do it. And then I get into chapter 1 or 2 and I'm like, no, this is the same thing. Trying to make it new, then, or maybe I get halfway through, I'm like, no, this is the same thing, then I'll just put it aside. I would not say throw it away, but I'd say literally put it aside, because if I want to research on different things, then I may need to choose a book that go from a different approach and can give me a better understanding, right? So
See,
yeah.
one more new tip from Zio is read the table of content before you think of buying a book, which...
Yes, I highly recommend. And table of contents, a lot of the time they are available for free. If you go on Amazon, they all give you table of contents for free. So, I know that a lot of people read reviews. I read book reviews too, but sometimes book review it's really, especially fiction, well, not even nonfiction too, is really based on their perspective. Everybody has a different perspective, right? So, but table of content is directly from the author. Actually, come back to these questions about summary. This is the author summarizing it for you to a certain extent. So you can also read the table of contents to learn how to summarize books.
Perfect. And before I get to the next questions, there's a comment I really like. I just want to read it out loud here, because that links to the next question. Is Vinh Huang, when I asked the question in the chat, so what's the most recent fictional book you read? So he's saying, Lord of the Rings, I recommend reading with listen to audiobooks as well. Speaker sings the songs in the book with amazing experiences. 100% better than watching movies. So that gets to the next questions of, do you think audiobooks have the same effect as physical book?
I think it really depends on your personal taste. So I personally process visual better than audio. So I read book and I skim, and as you can tell, I skim and I skip and I read the table of contents a lot. So reading physical book really help with that. Audiobook, not so much. So that's one thing for me. But I do have friends who are like, they have trouble reading, and especially if if you work with computers all day, your eyes get really tired and it can make you tired reading, then audiobook can really help. And also audiobook, I think, is really help in case of like fiction, when the different voices and the sound effects really create a whole different feeling to the book. Yeah, I mean, I may check Lord of the Rings out in audio form because that sounds interesting. Yeah, I think storytelling is inherently a lot more friendly to audiobooks than like nonfiction, especially statistic. Just imagine somebody trying to describe like a graph of population growth in like audiobook. I think that's really tough. But so it really depends on your personal taste and the type of content that you're looking for. But maybe just try it out and see for yourself.
Perfect. I think we only got time for a couple of more questions now. So the next one is, I find books like Sapiens easy to read and focus. Books like Why We Sleep are more difficult to read. I read it, yeah, I agree. It's quite difficult to digest. Okay, and sometimes content doesn't really go in. Do you have tips on how to approach different types of books? Maybe like the more difficult one, I guess.
Oh my God. Well, Why We Sleep is my favorite book of 2018. I think I recommend it many times, so thanks for name checking it. I personally was really engrossed in that book. But I do hear your voice about, some books are harder to read than the other. So I think this come back to the webinars and the different approaches that we can try. So, just remember why we read it. So you can keep the motivation up for reading the book. And then, maybe kind of like break it down into chunks. You don't have to read the whole book in one go. So if it seems like an insurmountable task, just break it down, like, you read chapter 1, this week, and then you break it down, and then you read chapter 1, and then you can maybe try to discuss with your friend about chapter 1, about the topic of chapter 1, and maybe just this will drum up your interest for chapter 2. And also like try to, so another thing that I do sometimes is to, habit stacking, like I mentioned before, read a chapter of Why We Sleep and then read a chapter of Sapiens. And then, or, um, and then another thing that you can also do is to, read multiple books at the same time. Like sometimes I do. So I have one book that I am, very hard to read, and it kind of really tire me if I read it for long. Then I'll switch to another book just to keep kind of this reading momentum going, and I switch back. So just kind of mix it up so that you don't get very bored or frustrated.
Right. I think we literally got time for one more questions. And then there's actually 3 questions that got the same voted one. So Zia, I'll let you decide which one you want to answer as the last one for today webinar.
All right. So should I? Oh, also there are 3 questions, and they all got the same amount of vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you read them or?
Yeah. Let me read them. So the first one is, could you give us an example of a manga that helped you with an important decision making? Ooh. How to find, I want to answer all of these questions.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
I mean, if you want to hear the answer, then I think you can stay. If you don't, then, and you need to go, then just go. And because I know it's late in Vietnam, so some of you may need to go to sleep. So I'll answer them in the, the current order. A manga that helped me with an important decision making. Interesting. There's I'm hesitating because there's so many. Oh, I think, Hikaru no Go for sure, because it's one coming to mind because I love mangas and I love books so much that actually I wanted to be a publisher. I want to as a job, right? When I was in, middle school, when you like ice cream so much that you just want to open an ice cream store when you grow up, that kind of thing happened with me. And then with Hikaru no Go, I decided and go ahead and do it myself. And then while I do publishing, or while I did, the work of, pitching and finding the right team, getting the right designer, getting the translation team together, understanding the technicalities of the game, actually go to study the game to understand the technicalities and etc. to get it done. I mean, I love the project and I love the results and get it done, but the experience kind of informed me that, well, I may not want to be a publisher right away. So after the book, I'm like, okay, that's, I would not apply for it as something to do in college. So I think it informed my decision making. I tried and I'm like, okay, it's fun while it lasts. And maybe I'll come back to publishing one day. You never know, right?
Yeah,
Second question, how to find the suitable genre for oneself? As a person who does not read that much, it is like one of the first steps to know what I like, but why there's so many books available, it is a little bit overwhelming. Interesting questions. I think, you can approach it in a lot of different ways. For example, one of the easy way to approach is that, if you have an idol or someone you admire or you want to be that person, and that person hopefully have a favorite book, then maybe just try the book that they recommend. Because one, probably it will be a good book, because it comes from someone that you admire. So there's something about them that you admire, and hopefully the things that you admire about them, they hopefully is part of it, they learn from books as well. So that's a good thing. So I know that Obama has his regular reading list that he posts online. Bill Gates as well has his regular reading list and review. You can do that. Or, even if you like idols culture and K-pop, some K-pop idols put their reading list online, like BTS. I watched one of their MVs and they start reading books. I was like, oh, what is this? Like, that reading book is actually, what is it? I don't know, some book about God. And actually, I saw a video of like a high school or middle school students trying to show that. Oh, another fun story. I know we ran out of time, but I think it's just really interesting story to say. So BTS has this music video called Spring Day, I think. And in that, it referenced to a science fiction novel, a very famous science fiction novel by a very good writer. I have a friend who's a writer, poet, and translator, a great one. And he was writing this article about science fiction, and he mentioned, oh, Vietnamese youth or youth in general are so interested in science fiction. They read the boy from, they read Omelas by Ursula K. Guin. And I laugh out loud. I have to text him. I say, please don't write that in your article. They are not interested in Ursula K. Guin. Or it's like a reference interest. Please don't judge the interest in highbrow science fiction based on that, because that is not the truth. But anyway, so you can try. And then finally, greetings from a current MHC student. Yay, Monholio. I really enjoy close reading and marginalia, but I found both techniques quite consuming and somewhat counterproductive. What can I do to satisfy this each and still achieve my reading goals? To be honest, I don't know what those two techniques are. They are probably a little bit too advanced for me. But I think similarly, like with like how Sơn mentioned that he haven't tried bullet journal because it's a little bit time consuming and tiring. I think we can always start small and start easy and start with something that is closest to us. So maybe trying to do something that is the easiest out of those things. And if it doesn't work, then try some other techniques, I guess. See, you guys know a lot more about reading than I do. So it's a learning experience for me too. Anyway, hopefully.
Okay, so yeah, I'm afraid we get to end the webinar, but thank you so much everyone for staying to the end. I really hope that you're all enjoying the sessions, learn a lot from Zeal, and also have a good time putting in the chats as well. I think we have a very busy chat today, and there's some very good observation. There's some very good comments that I read as well. So yeah, what's next? I say probably 3 times again today, but I just want to say again, there's going to be 6 more webinars coming up from Viet Pro every Saturday and Sunday. Follow our Facebook page just to see what's coming up, be a part of our community. And of course, there's a link to donate as well. So be a part of it, make a change, and together we'll get through this difficult time. And for now, wherever you're in the world, just enjoy the rest of your day. Have so much fun, and also enjoy your readings as well. Thank you, Zil, for being a great speaker today. And we're just gonna finish now, but yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone for joining, and have a good night for those who are going to sleep like me.
Bye.
Bye.